Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of Slipping Out. In this episode we're going to be taking a closer look at Resident Evil 4. So as we always do, let's start at the very beginning where we find Leon being driven to a village by two Spanish guards. Here we get an opportunity to see how the camera works and how, like we've seen in other games previously, what can't usually be seen on the camera often isn't loaded into the game, like how the guards keep disappearing from the front seats. I mean, who's driving this thing right now? One thing that I think pretty much anybody who played this game at the time wanted to know was, is this guard actually having a pee at the side of the track? Well, actually no, he's not. He's just standing there with his hands in front of him pretending. We can also see here how sometimes the camera has textures over the front of what would be the lens. This one is obviously to give the impression of fog. Whilst Leon's on the video calls to Hunnigan, we can take the camera around the back of the display to take a closer look at the character models. The obvious thing to notice is that Hunnigan has no lower torso, probably because we never normally see that far down.
Whoever this group is, they sure
if we zoom the camera right in, surprisingly we can go behind the clothing textures for Hunnigan, and she has shoulders on her model. We can of course do this for other video calls as well, like the ones from Salazar and Sadler. Weirdly, unlike Hunnigan, we see these two models throughout the game, so I guess for them to be missing the lower torso was just a way of saving memory, although what Sadler is doing right here with his arms is anyone's guess.
Sounds bad.
One last thing to note is even when the signal's lost in this transmission, Hunnigan is still waiting on the other side. Isn't she a good un? When I was a kid playing this game, one of the main things that I really wanted to know was what was across this bridge, but of course the guards stop us going over there, so let's take the camera and have a peek. Well, it's not too long before we come to the edge of the map. Of course, these tree textures are what covers this from the normal view of the player. And whilst we're here, let's take a closer look at our main man Leon. If we zoom the camera right in, even though his mouth is closed, if we go beyond this, we can see he has a tongue and teeth, as well as some eyeballs, which go into his head. Now that might sound pretty obvious, but for the time this was quite detailed, and even when we look at character models on the games of today, not too much has changed. On approaching the first house, we get this cutscene where we can only see the shadow at the window, but does this shadow have an owner? Well, if we look from this angle, yes it does, but take a closer look at the shadow. We can only see the top half, and it actually moves with the camera. Let's go and take a look inside and see if we can find him. Well, like I mentioned before, things don't normally load up unless they're needed, and he actually loads up when the cutscene starts.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah! Let's take a look at the crash site, in particular the vehicles and how the fire effect is done. And we can see here it's pretty much 3 layers of 2D flames, which is kind of cool. It gives a good effect when you're looking down on it. But where are the guards? Well, let's zoom in to the car and we can see just underneath the water there is no one sat in the seats, so they must have got away. And also the guy who was driving the truck, he's also got out and ran off. What's inside the knocking cupboard before we open it? Well, nothing. Of course, in the cutscene we find Lewis in here. Talking of cutscenes, when we move the camera during them, we can find all sorts of bizarre happenings, like Sadler's head missing during this one. And probably one of my favourite cutscenes in the game is when the El Gigante comes through the gates, albeit if we move the camera, the El Gigante is missing until he needs to make the appearance. After entering the village church, I wanted to know, was the village still outside? And if we take a look through the window, you'd certainly think so. Although, like most things in these episodes, looks can be deceptive. If we zoom the camera out, we can actually see it's just a 2D texture that's been warped around the window from where we can see. In other places, whilst I was exploring outside the maps, I came across items that you would never normally come across or be able to pick up, like this pile of ammunition and the red herb. This is not uncommon for developers to do this, as it makes it easier for them to debug the game and also add things like ammo into the map if it's needed. So we're here at the lake. Now don't shoot the water, guys, it's dangerous, but let's go in with the camera and see how the water effect's done. And if we go through the first layer of water, we can see these fishes and they're actually quite detailed. If we keep going down, we've got layer after layer of what looks like weeds, and then we can finally see the bottom of the lake. We briefly spoke earlier about items found outside the maps. Well, in this zoom out of the church, if we go around the back, we find some ammunition and herbs, so nothing too unusual there. However, behind here, we can also find a note, and of course notes usually have some sort of message that we read which progresses the story or helps us out in some way. So to find one outside the map doesn't really make too much sense. Could this be a secret note nobody has read? I guess we'll never know. You guessed it, we can also take the camera and look around at the inventory screens, and check it out. We have a fully modelled Leon and all the items in our box are 3D, and if we zoom out from the inventory screen map, we can see the whole map in the background that's normally hidden behind that one tiny screen. Pretty cool stuff. Now, where does Ashley go when she climbs over the top of the gate to unlock it from the other side? Well, let's take a look. And she's climbing up there and she jumps over and gets stuck. Great.
Quick, in that cabin!
Here we can see the horde of zombie villagers that chased us into the cabin thankfully turns into 3 at a time, and we can see from this angle how they respawn after shooting them. Unlike most things that disappear when out of camera shot, if we ask Ashley to hide in something, even when the lid is closed, we can still find her inside there. She even keeps her facial functions like blinking and eye movements. One of my favourite parts in the game was the skylift scene, and the map was pretty large too. If we take the camera and fly it around, we can even see the castle close up that's way off in the distance. When we shoot the zombie villagers off the side, how far do they fall into the canyon? I always wanted to find this out, so here it is. They always seem to disappear just out of the normal camera shot. And how are these guys getting on the lift in the first place? Well, if I slow the footage right down, we can see one spawning right there, just behind the pillar for the cable car. We've just defeated the evil boss Bitores Mendez, and his eye is now ready for collection off the floor. For those who don't like gruesome stuff, then don't worry, it is just a fake eye. However, if we spin the camera round, his eye can also still be seen as part of him. Now I know these guys are mutants, but to grow a second fake eye, that's pretty impressive. Remember the truck that comes down the hill and crashes if we shoot the driver? I always wondered where this truck was before we trigger it, and here it is sat waiting to be driven by this guy who's already making some crazy facial movements. I also wondered what happens to the large group who chase us into the castle. Well, from looking at this, I guess they just gave up. Maybe they went back to the village. Res 4 had some pretty cool map design layouts with various level heights which overlap other parts of the map, one of which being this part of the castle walls. Let's take a quick look. And how are these guys firing the flaming boulders? Well, here it is. They simply have a rock pile that generates the rocks that they pick up, and then they set on fire automatically and get flung towards us. We can also see from this angle that the fire is 2D.
You alright?
I'm fine! Leave me alone!
Ashley, wait!
Where does Ashley go when she runs away from Leon and gets caught in the spinning wall trap? Well, let's take the camera to the other side of the wall and have a look. And you guessed it, initially Ashley is on the other side of the wall, but if we zoom the camera back out, she's then disappeared.
Don't worry, Ashley. I'm coming for you.
One thing I found quite interesting about some of the characters in Res 4, like these enemies who were the golden skull masks, is if we take the camera through the mask, they actually have eyes underneath, even though normally we wouldn't be able to see them because of the mask. And we can also find this on other enemy characters throughout the game, like the guys with the chainsaws. Underneath the sack mask, they are the same model as some of the other villagers that we find. One of my favourite zoom outs of any of the maps had to be this one in the lava room. If we go right out with the camera, we can see how the lava rotates around the room to give the impression that it's constantly moving. There's also another red layer underneath that stays still. If you played this game back in the day, you'll probably remember how you get on carriages to get around the castle quicker. However, when you do, you only see a quick clip of the carriage setting off. But if we take the camera down the tracks, we can see the whole route that was planned for the carriage to take. Why all that's there, I'm not too sure, but it is pretty interesting to see. Whilst we're here, we also get a great scenery view of part of the castle in the background, and it looks pretty awesome from where we're stood. When we take the camera over, we can see the 3D models close up and just how much work went into them rather than just simply using a 2D texture. Alright guys, so we're in the room where the roof comes down with the spikes on and crushes us if we're not quick enough. But how does this work? Well, let's take the camera up through the roof, and if we move it back a little bit we can see it's being lowered on chains. But of course it's not being lowered on chains, the roof is just lowering down on its own, and in fact I'm not even sure why there are chains up here because we never normally see them. So here we are in what I'm gonna call the sewer section of the game, and Vertigo just banged on the door we came through. But is he still outside there? Well, of course, if we take the camera through the door, that part of the map is now deloaded, so he's not gonna be there. But what he does do is come through the roof to try and stab us with his tail and catch us off guard. Now if I take the camera above the roof we can see how this happens. So as you can see, when it's his tail that comes through the roof, his body model is missing. However, his full character also comes through and tries to grab us. It then shoots back up through the roof and disappears above. This may seem a little strange to you guys, but I remember playing this and wanting to be able to see what was happening inside the mining pit with the large drill. So for anyone else who wanted to know this, here it is. Kind of reminds me of an old kaleidoscope or something. Okay guys, check this out. Where did the two El Gigantes come from before we fight them? Well, if we slow this footage down we can see they actually drop in from the top of the map just behind the door as we activate the clip. On defeating these two badasses, and as long as we managed to drop one of them into the molten metal pit, I can honestly say that I wasn't expecting to find too much. But if we take the camera through the doors, check it out, we can see the El Gigante that we dropped into the pit now has a different but pretty awesome looking skin cover. How do these two guys keep chucking dynamite at us? With the camera through the door, we can see that they seem to have an infinite source of dynamite strapped to the back. Something a bit different in the game was when we could pick these enemies up with the crane and drop them into the waste chute, but I wanted to find out what happens to them. With the camera at the bottom of the chute we can see they just disappear out of camera shot from the normal angle of the player. One of the more bizarre things I came across in the game is when we come to rescue Ashley, and by going around the corner we can see her skirt seems to be glitching out. I'm not entirely sure why this is happening, but I'll let you guys make your own minds up. It's certainly been a long slog for Leon, but finally we get some help from a helicopter pilot named Mike. Interestingly, we only see Mike once or twice during the cutscenes, but I did manage to take a look at his face. So this is one of the only times we see Mike, and it's for a split second when he presses the trigger for the minigun, but by spinning the camera round at this point we can see Mike's face, and check out these weird eyes. Now these eyes are unlike any of the other characters that we've seen in the game who use separate texture files. Mike's is included in his very own texture file, which is pretty weird and I'm pretty sure is correct. I'm not going to jump to conclusions to why this is, but it would be interesting to hear what you guys think. Also, whilst we're talking about the helicopter, take a look at the amount of detail in here. It's pretty astonishing, being I'd assume it would just be the empty shell of a chopper. And please try and excuse my camera work here guys, it was pretty difficult to get these shots whilst the chopper was flying around. Possibly the craziest moment I had whilst filming this episode was when I randomly took the camera to look at some of the scenery that represents the final boss part of the map. With the normal rifle scope you cannot even see across here, but this is what I found when I took the camera over. And I've not seen anyone else on any website or any video even reference this, but it has to be some sort of Easter egg. So just who is this? Is it a developer? I have no idea. Have we actually discovered a new secret here at Slippy Slides about Resident Evil 4 after all these years? Please let me know if you've seen this somewhere else, as I'd love to know more about this and who this person is. Okay guys, we are nearly at the end, but I just wanted to do one final zoom out of the final boss map, as it looks pretty impressive and it just shows how big some of the areas out of the maps actually are. Don't worry guys, the water doesn't seem to be too deep. Ashley appears to be able to stand up, so she'll be just fine.
Come on. Let's go home.
Sounds like a great idea. Mission accomplished. Right, Leon?
Not quite.
So that is it for this episode guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've had fun and I hope to catch you soon in future videos. Until then, take care and stay slippy.